He's been one of the top lightweights in the world for the last 10 years, and now he brings it to a brand new platform in the UFC's the co-main event, UFC 257 against Dan Hooker. So, Michael, mentally, I'm sure you had a list of the people that you match up best against in your mind at the top of the division. If you were to tell me who you think of the top 5, 6 guys in the lightweight division that you personally match up best against, who do you think that would be?
I think I match up best with Gaethje, Poirier, and Connor, probably, honestly. And then Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker would be after that. He'd probably be fourth. So it's interesting that I end up with Dan Hooker first fight. But, man, I didn't sign with the UFC to have a walk in the park. I didn't sign with the UFC to have anything less than the most challenges that I could possibly have in this second half of my career.
That's a really interesting answer. So why do you think Dan Hooker would pose more of a threat or be a worse matchup for you than those other three you mentioned?
I just think he's, I don't think he's necessarily more skilled than those other fighters that I mentioned, nor would he win in the contests against them. But I do believe his physical attributes, coupled with his willingness to exchange, his tough chin, as well as just the different aspects that he brings to the octagon. And he's ranked number 6. Obviously, I wanted to fight number 2, 3, 4, or 5 before I fought number 6. But beggars can't be choosers. Dan Hooker was the guy who said yes when everybody else said no. So here we go. January 23rd, we get a great opportunity. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, that was my next question. What other names came across your desk that, for whatever reason, it didn't come together?
Every single one of them in the top 5 besides Connor. They all, and rightfully so. Listen, these guys have cut their teeth in this organization. These guys everybody in the top 5 has fought in this UFC lightweight division for 5 to 10 years. These guys have put their time in, their blood, sweat, and tears in. I realized I was an outsider, a newcomer, a dark horse. I realized nobody wanted to really be the first guy who stepped into that octagon with me. So I completely get it. If the shoe was on the other foot, I would completely understand. So Dan Hooker was the guy that said yes, and every other one of them said no for their own personal reasons. And, the good thing is I have a fight lined up. We have a contract signed, the biggest card of the year, and the co-main event of UFC 257 isn't a bad way to introduce yourself to the UFC fans.
It's always why I thought the rankings are kind of dumb. People look at your name. It doesn't have a number beside it, so why risk their ranking to face you? That's kind of what I believe the mentality is in MMA.
Yeah, it's true. And of course, there's always the business aspect of it. There's the business component of it. Every single one of these guys is a smart individual. They're trying to think about their own personal career, their own personal brand, their own personal journey to get to the top and to get the financial security. And they also have managers who are advising them and managing them in their decision-making and what makes the most sense for their careers. So I completely get it. Yes, there's not a number next to my name because I'm a guy who's coming from the outside. But the great thing is every single one of these guys in the top 10, every single one of these guys in the UFC lightweight division and across the entire UFC roster has seen some of my body of work at least. They've seen my resume. They've seen my previous fights. They've watched my previous fight of the year candidates that I've been in, And there's a lot of respect, mutual respect between myself and a lot of the fighters in this, not just in this organization, but also within the division. So people know who I am. And on next Saturday night, I get to put a stamp on that.
Well, watching those fights, I think, would be their first mistake because facing you after watching those fights would be probably pretty terrifying for most human beings. But one thing that you mentioned, I think it's kind of short-sighted. I think that you had mentioned in a previous interview that Dana White has said to you, your numbers are trending high. People know who you are. People are interested in Michael Chandler. I think that if any of these guys got in there with you, they could only elevate their stock. You know, we know what to expect if we see Justin Gaethje face, let's say, a Dan Hooker or Ferguson. People are more familiar with them. You kind of have this aura of mystery around you right now as a result of coming in from Bellator.
Yeah, I will say, Aaron, that is kind of one of the things that I thought, you know, when I'm having these conversations with my manager, I sit back and say, man, I don't have a number next to my name, but that's only because I don't have any tenure in the organization yet. But there's a lot to be said about a guy who steps up and fights the guy without a number next to his name. You know, there's something to be said about the competitor spirit, the competitive spirit of the guy who says, I will fight that guy coming from another organization who doesn't have a number next to his name, who we don't quite know what to expect when he puts on those UFC gloves and steps into that UFC octagon. But the opposite was true, in fact, and Dan Hooker said yes. And Dan Hooker, I appreciate Dan Hooker stepping up and being the guy who will test the waters of who is Michael Chandler. Is he any good? I know he's taking a chance by fighting me, especially because I think he knows the skill set that I bring to the competition. But it remains to be seen. I'm excited to go out there and compete, put my skills for all the world to see at UFC 257.
Well, it certainly seems like the UFC is doing right by you since you've signed. If you look at the biggest two pay-per-views, the one with Khabib taking on Gaethje, of course, a massive pay-per-view. You were associated with that one as the backup for that championship fight. Now you're on the Conor card as the co-main event. I mean, they certainly are making sure that the eyeballs are going to be on you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a humbling feeling. It's a humbling experience to come in and feel that kind of love or that kind of support. But it is a long time coming. You know, it's not as though I'm a newcomer to the sport. I am maybe a newcomer to the UFC, but I am not a newcomer to the sport of mixed martial arts, the competition of mixed martial arts. My body of work stands on its own two legs, and I've had some great performances, a lot of ups, a couple downs, a couple comeback stories that people can dive into and hopefully be inspired by. So I think I just bring a decent amount to the table to be able to for that support to be warranted. I by no means came in and stomped my feet and demanded anything. I just think the UFC sees an opportunity in me, whether it be, things outside of that octagon or the ferocity that they know I'm going to bring inside of the octagon. But either way, I think it's going to be a perfect storm for 2021. Me starting out the year with a bang January 23rd and then carrying that on into another win, possibly a title shot, and hopefully get that UFC strap by the end of 2021.
Now, no disrespect to Patricio Pitbull, who I wouldn't even really consider a lightweight, or to Brent Primus, but I think the three best lightweights to ever compete in Bellator are yourself, Eddie Alvarez, Will Brooks. Now, the commonality you all now have shared, and I guess as soon as you step in the cage at UFC 257 will be that you've all fought in the UFC. Now, Eddie Alvarez became a champion. Will Brooks kind of flamed out, and I'm curious why you think that is.
Just like... I will agree with you, by the way. I think myself and Eddie and Will Brooks are probably the three best to ever do it inside Bellator. But just as you alluded to Will Brooks not having a great – I think styles make fights. And just because Will Brooks fizzled out, I mean, he could have fought 25 other guys in his 3-fight stint and won those fights. Just like I did not match up well against him whenever we fought. I wasn't in the right space mentally, physically, and spiritually where I needed to be to go win those fights. And turns out he was the better man in the confines of the competition on those nights. So I think there's a myriad of different reasons. For him, I'm not quite sure what it was. He had all the physical talent. He had all the abilities to be able to go out there and have a successful UFC career. And haven't put a ton of thought into it, but I do look at Eddie's road. Eddie had a tough road, as will I. I expected to have a tough road. I wanted the top 5 guys right away. He went Cowboy Cerrone and Melendez, Pettis, and then RDA, I believe, after that. So he had a tough road, and I expect to have a tough road, starting with Dan Hooker, and then somebody else inside the top 5, whether it be for the title or not, and hopefully cap this year off with the UFC title shot by the end of the year.
And if I recall, I think he also faced Charles Oliveira, who you were aligned with for this particular fight. Apparently, Charles said he didn't want to cut the weight on such a short turnaround. When you look at styles making fights, I mean, Charles Oliveira is going to be a tough guy for anybody in this top 5 to stop, based on his incredible jiu-jitsu. And of course, I think his striking has really been elevated to new levels.
Yeah, the Charles Oliveira that we see fighting right now is a much improved version of the young man who started with the UFC a long time ago. He was one of those guys who came into the UFC at a very young age. He's got a decent amount of losses, but a lot of those are missteps or bad weight cuts or just bad tactical errors that he made as a young man, as a young fighter. As all of us in this division continue to grow, continue to mature, continue to grow in and blossom into the adult, grown man, mixed martial artists that we are. You know, I just saw an interview. Connor was talking about how him and Poirier were young and single, whenever, or not single, but, you know, they weren't married the first time they fought. Now they're both married with children, if not two children. You know, so the ebbs and the flows and the growth process of each individual fighter in this division is something great to watch. Obviously, I've been watching it from afar. Now I'm watching it with more of a insider keen eye, because these guys will be my future competitors. But Charles Oliveira is on a tear, and I completely understand, obviously, for the record, why Charles Oliveira didn't take the quick turnaround. He fought middle of December, and they were asking him to fight mid to late January. 4-week turnaround. I completely get it. I knew that one was going to be a long shot. Either way, we land on Dan Hooker January 23rd, and I'm excited.
You were kind of in the same boat, and one thing that I really respect about you is that you are able to take time that you want to set aside for your family to make sure that that's uninterrupted time. I think that that's something that's got to be good for your headspace in this sport.
Yeah, it's good for my headspace, and it's really just the most important thing for me in my life is seeing through to my commitments. Integrity and character is doing what you say you're going to do and then following through. The day that I married my wife, I promised to love and take care of her and cherish her and serve her for until I take my last breath. And the same thing when I adopted my son a couple years ago. He didn't understand me when I was saying it to him, but I promised him I was going to love and care and take care of and protect him. So when I was on the road for 8 months straight, training away from them down in Florida because of the coronavirus, not getting any time with them, not getting the personal touch, the physical touch, the emotional support that they needed, it was eating away at me because I wasn't following through with my end of the bargain. So I needed a couple of weeks to just go home and be dad, go home, be husband, take my wife on dates, hang out with my son. I needed that time for myself, but also as a show of my commitment to them. And if that makes me any lesser in anybody else's eyes, because I made that decision as a father and as a husband instead of just as an athlete, then so be it. Father and husband are more important to me than athlete ever will be. So it's all working out well. It's a crazy life we live, especially right now in the era of the coronavirus. We're figuring it out. As you can see, I'm in my hotel room right now. 24-hour quarantine, then hopping on a plane for 16 hours to be in another hotel room for 48 hours quarantine. Just a crazy life we live. So the small, quick trips and time that I can go give my family is absolutely paramount to my success, and they're the reason I fight.
Now, I'm in Canada, so I'm a little bit separated from the political situation right now in the U.S. and that climate. One thing that I noticed you tweeted was that you are also on Parler. I know that app, I guess, right now is down. But what kind of a difference would people that followed you on that app have gotten than following you on Twitter? I know that app is a little bit more politically oriented, whereas Twitter is more personality oriented based on if you're an athlete, you're mostly tweeting about your athletic endeavors. Would they have gotten anything different from you on that platform?
No, if you'll actually see, I mean, I'm brand new to it. Truthfully, I joined Parler, Gab, and Clout Hub all at the same time. I think what we're seeing right now, whether you believe in whatever side of the political spectrum you are on, silencing people and censoring people on social media is definitely something that we need to call into concern on in this country, in the United States, the greatest free country on the entire planet. And the reason that we are such a great country is that we have the freedoms that men and women died for over the last century. So it was just me joining other social media platforms as well. I'm still active on Twitter. I'm still active on Instagram. And if you will see my content, it's not as though I am posting anything political. I have 3 or 4 posts on Parler, I believe, and they are all just regurgitated videos and quotes from my Instagram or Twitter onto a Parler account. It's just another way to spread myself out, spread my reach out more on social media. A lot of people took it as a using words like white supremacists and Nazis and all this kind of other crazy stuff. Obviously, Parler is more right-leaning. It is more politically driven. I by no means associate with any of those types of groups, as well as and I also condemn any of those activities that those people are engaged in, nor do I share any of those far right-wing political views. But I am a red, white, and blue-blooded American. I love the freedom of speech. I love the First Amendment, and me spreading myself out on social media was not a stab at any of the other social media organizations. It was more just me spreading myself out.
I'm glad I give you the opportunity to clear that up. I think a lot of people were interested in why you joined that. Well, it's good that you're spreading yourself out and spreading out your brand. So I'm glad that you had a chance to clear the air on that.
And I appreciate you asking, because truthfully, it's been about a week now where I've sat and I've mulled over it, because I don't want people to think that I'm associated with any extremists. But there's extremists on both sides. And what I also said too was maybe Parler starts out right wing leaning, if you will, but every social media starts out a certain way and then spreads itself out and becomes more all inclusive. And I think Parler, you'll see that with Parler over the next couple of years. But just like Instagram started as a app for photographers, and now you got all of us on it. So it's just the nature of social media. But I appreciate you asking that question, because I'm all over the place now on social media, trying to expand my reach as much as possible. And I imagine after January 23rd, that reach will even grow further. And my goal here is to love on, inspire, and motivate everybody. So I appreciate you asking that question.
All right, Michael, I appreciate your time. Thank you for this, and best of luck to you to the co-main event, UFC 257, yourself, Dan Hooker, and we look forward to seeing your UFC debut.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, Aaron. I'll see you at the top.